Good evening. This is Jonathan Sauerschell with Blue York 1. This week, we have to review one game, preview the next game, and go over some news. First, we'll update you on some roster moves that happened within the past week for NYCFC. The first bit of news is that Andrew Jacobson was no longer part of NYCFC. He has been traded to the Vancouver Whitecaps for targeted allocation money, or TAM as it's known. Another one of those MLS trades that involve acronyms and not actual players on one end of things. But really what the gist of it is that Andrew Jacobson seemingly requested a trade closer to his West Coast home. He has a new family, and he wanted to be closer to them. NYCFC obliged and worked out a trade where he's going to Vancouver in exchange for the targeted allocation money, which can be used in a few different ways. Basically, it's MLS's way of trying to increase spending for their teams. It could be used to pay down a more expensive contract. Initially, it was brought into the league to help LA pay down Omar Gonzalez's contract to take him off as a designated player so they could add another designated player. NYCFC could theoretically do something like that. We will see how they choose to use it going forward. But we wish Andrew Jacobson well, and good luck with his family. Congratulations, and best of luck in Vancouver. Certainly, last year he was a consistent performer, part of almost every match. He was in the game. He was our defensive midfielder, kind of our only defensive midfielder, and he gave a hard-nosed toughness that really the team needed in their first season. So congratulations, Andrew Jacobson, and good luck to Andrew Jacobson. Subsequently, NYCFC also announced a new acquisition. They have acquired on loan Steven Mendoza, 23-year-old Colombian forward, formerly of Corinthians in Brazil, but he didn't play there very much and was most notably loaned out to the Indian Super League the past few seasons, and actually won their league MVP this past year. Steven Mendoza is he's quick, extremely fast, and while seemingly having a nose for goal, his notable statistics do come from the Indian Super League. However, NYCFC do seem to like him. Patrick Vieira spoke very highly of him. And actually, we did see Steven Mendoza this week in the Toronto game. He came off the bench wearing number 9 and immediately showed his athleticism and speed and lack of fear taking on any and all Toronto defenders. So we look forward to seeing him play more throughout the year. Steven Mendoza does take up an international roster spot, which NYCFC was able to temporarily solve by placing Jack Harrison on the disabled list. Not a huge surprise, considering we know he's coming back from an injury suffered before the MLS Combine, some pelvic injury of some kind. A disabled list means he will miss a minimum of 6 games, which is still in line with what was being discussed as his time frame to return, which was somewhere about 8 weeks, so 2 months. So at that point, they might need to add another international roster spot. Potentially Jack Harrison gets a green card. Potentially another player's injured, and then they don't have to worry. But that gives them time to figure out how they want to handle it permanently for international roster spots. But welcome Steven Mendoza. And get well soon, Jack Harrison. Now on to the game. This past Sunday saw the home opener for NYCFC. In front of 30,315 people at Yankee Stadium, NYCFC played Toronto FC to a 2-2 draw. In a game that saw numerous talking points, the first of which was NYCFC's starting lineup. They went with 3 at the back. They went with Jason Hernandez in the middle, flanked by Ronald Matarrita and Frederick Brillant. Their midfield, which was a midfield 4, was Andrea Pirlo, Federico Bravo, and in front of them was going to be Tommy McNamara and Mix Diskerud. The front 3 were Tony Taylor, David Villa, and Kyrie Shelton. Also of note, Kwadwo Poku was not on the bench for this game. Did not make the matchday squad, and that has certainly caused some discussion point. We have no official news to discuss on this, only that he did not make the bench, but he is still training with the team as normal, and Patrick Vieira did comment after the game stating that he expects him to contribute to this team and is an important member of this team for 2016. On to the match. NYCFC started off strong. They looked good with 3 at the back. Part of this was to stop Giovinco. Since Josie Altidore was out, Giovinco was sort of isolated, and by playing 3 at the back, they could actually outnumber him in some ways. With a normal 4 at the back, if you push your fullbacks up, you actually often leave just 2 at the back. So they were able to really control Giovinco for a large part of the game, and certainly throughout the first half. And they were able to get numbers forward into dangerous areas and to overwhelm Toronto's defense. They missed a few chances early on, probably should have scored multiple times. And then, in the 20th minute, Tommy McNamara gets brought down in the penalty box for a rightfully called penalty, and David Villa steps up and puts it away for the 1-0 lead. Not 5 minutes later, David Villa scored again after a great Andrea Pirlo free kick that could not be cleared. Mix Diskerud headed it in the box, headed it forward towards goal. David Villa was able to post up his man, keep him from getting to the ball, and turn and shoot and make it 2-0. So Yankee Stadium was rocking, and I can tell you we were flying. It looked like this was going to be a great win for us. NYCFC definitely looked like the better team. Unfortunately, within the last 15 minutes of the half, Toronto made a slight adjustment in their formation. They were able to push out a little wider, even though they don't have true wide players. They were able to stretch the field a little more, and that created opportunities for them to get forward, and they drew some fouls. Most notably, Federico Bravo, who, while did a good job playing defensive support and really taking pressure off Pirlo, did commit some fouls at his first start. One of them, in the last minute of stoppage time of the first half, led to a free kick that Giovinco put into the box in a dangerous area. Bravo looked like he lost his mark, Damien Perquis, while Brilliant seemed to play him onside. Perquis was able to put it past Josh Saunders and go into the half down 2-1 instead of 2-0. As it turns out, this, for many people, was the turning point of the game. The second half, so NYCFC started out the same. It was kind of a scrappy half. Neither team was able to generate many chances. They kind of went back and forth, a lot of midfield play, but neither was able to sustain anything, and NYCFC still really looked like the better team. They made a sub in the 66th minute. Steven Mendoza came on for Tony Taylor, so we got to see Steven Mendoza for the first time. He came on, and he certainly looked fast and lively. Unfortunately, Toronto was able to carve out a little bit of space, and Giovinco was given a yard and a half by Frederick Brilliant, who had him squared up. Giovinco still shot it through his legs and past Josh Saunders into the far corner, kind of out of nowhere, certainly against the run of play, to tie the game at 2. After that, NYCFC made 2 more subs, bringing in Mikey Lopez and Ethan White, and taking off Tommy McNamara and Kyrie Shelton. Ultimately, they could not find a winner. Mikey Lopez shot a header wide in the 84th minute that would have won the game after a great fizzed cross by David Villa. But in the end, NYCFC got a 2-2 draw. Disappointing 2-2 draw, but also an optimistic 2-2 draw, as they certainly performed a lot better than they did against Chicago, even though they got a different result from that game. The 3 at the back formation certainly showed promise, certainly against a team like Toronto that didn't have pure wide players, and they made some things work in the final third. Andrea Pirlo actually had a great game with 8 tackles, partially because he was afforded the opportunity to take risks if he wanted to, because Federico Bravo was covering for him. And he had 110 touches, completing 80% of his passes, including 10 of 15 long balls. He had a very strong game. David Villa had the 2 goals. Ronald Matarrita also stood out as a standout performer for his play on the left side of defense. This week, NYCFC stays at home, and they actually play the Friday night game, the Univision nationally televised game against Orlando City FC. This is a game that New York City FC is going to look to stop Orlando's wide players. Orlando has a lot of good, fast players in wide areas, and they're going to look get the ball in to Kyle Larin from those wide areas. With that in mind, I don't think we'll see the three at the back as it gives up too much space in those wide areas, and I think we might return to a four at the back, a potential 4-3-3 formation. This week in training, it has been noted today that Jefferson Mena has been training with the team, as has Andoni Iraola. They seem to be back and possibly available for selection this week, as well as Hernandez, Brilliant, Matarrita, and the normal defensive options, Ethan White included. So I think we might see four at the back this week. There is questions about defensive midfield. Andrea Pirlo, let's not kid ourselves, he's not a defensive midfielder. He was able to have an effective game because he had somebody to support him. If you're asking him to be the main defensive midfielder, that could be a problem. But Orlando does like to attack through wide areas. Kaká is still expected to be out of the lineup, so they will not have that playmaking number 10 to drift between the lines. But you can expect to see fast players like Molino, Rivas, Breck Shea. They will be looking to get forward on the flanks and find Kyle Larin, who has started off his season about as well as he ended last year with 2 goals in 2 games. And he looks like he is legitimately one of the top strikers in MLS, so it's certainly something to be concerned about. That being said, Orlando does have some concerns at defense. They brought in 2 new goalkeepers this year, and right now the one they're using, Bendik, does not look particularly strong. And we discussed this on Blue City Radio this week with Dan McGann of the Mainland, who writes about Orlando City SC, and he specifically mentioned their goalkeeping situation has not been good. Aurelian Collin is currently not starting with the team. While there might be some green card issues there is the rumors of some fallout with manager Adrian Heath. Their defense is a work in progress, and they have concerns about allowing goals to a talented NYCFC attack. So when it kicks off, I expect NYCFC to line up in a 4-3-3, and I expect them to be able to score goals. I also expect that our center-back partnership will not be Brilliant and Jason Hernandez. I do think it'll be Brilliant and Ethan White, which is what it was throughout most of preseason. And I think we'll see Iraola at right back and Matarrita at left back. With that in mind, I think NYCFC gets a 3-2 victory. Still not great defensively, allowing too many goals, but at the same time, I think they can score goals in bunches with any team in this league and can take advantage of a uncertain Orlando back line. It might not be pretty, but it should be exciting, as most of their games were last year. Near NYCFC, if they can get a win, would then be up to 7 points, as they currently sit third in the Eastern Conference, but above notable teams such as the New York Red Bulls, who have 0 points through 2 games. And with that, we look forward to NYCFC in Orlando on Friday night, and we'll be back with you next week to review that game and preview the following week's game and update you on any news about NYCFC. I'm Jonathan Sauerschell from Blue York One, NYCFCBlues.com, and Blue City Radio, if you want to hear us talk about this in podcast format. Have a great evening. Talk to you next week.